Good afternoon and welcome to the May 16th, 2013 Town of Cary Planning and Development Committee meeting. Joining me, I'm Don Frantz. To my left is Town Councilman Ed Yerha. To my right, Mayor Pro Tem Gale Adcock. And to her right, Town Manager Ben Shiver. We have one item on the consent agenda. Would any councilman care to pull it or anything? Okay. I do just want to make a comment on it. I do have some concerns on this one. Not so much with the study, but if the study were to come back and, actually implementing it or doing something grade separated, it just really concerns me as far as changing the character, look and feel of that corridor in the downtown and the impact to adjoining businesses. So be watching this one real close as it goes along. First up for discussion was, our only item up for discussion would be LDO changes round 26, and we'll hear from Mr. Ricky Barker of our staff.
Good evening, council members. Staff is recommending several significant amendments to our land development ordinance. As stated in the staff report, we're here to receive your direction on whether you want to move forward with these items to set a public hearing for June 27th. The most significant changes are related to signage for businesses. Staff also has some non-sign related amendments that I'll discuss briefly. With regard to the sign ordinance changes, staff is recommending allowing multiple signs per building facade segments for single tenants. We're also recommending allowing monument signs to increase in height from 12 feet to 16 feet in height, only for those non-residential developments containing over 130,000 square feet of space. We believe an increase in height for these larger commercial centers is warranted to provide more visibility along our major thoroughfares. Staff also recommends an increase in the square footage of these larger height signs from 32 square feet to 50 square feet. In addition, staff recommends that if someone wanted to put a logo on one of these monument signs, that they could use up to 75% of the allowable sign area on that monument, only if the logo contains low intensity colors and meets certain design standards, which would be non-cabinet type signs, more maybe carved wood or simulated carved wood or other things that would meet those certain standards. We also recommend that logo size be increased to up to 75% on wall sign areas for tenant spaces 100,000 square feet or larger, and for up to 30% for other businesses, provided that these certain aesthetic standards are met for the logos. The current standard is 20% of the sign area can be a registered logo. Another change to our sign ordinance involves principal ground signs. First, staff is recommending an increase in height of principal ground signs from 3.5 feet to 4.5 feet. And one of the reasons we're recommending that is that we've noticed that a lot of these ground signs are, to help with the aesthetics, are having landscaping, and of course that grows up and blocks the sign. So another foot would kind of help with offsetting that. If we want the landscaping, then raising the height, and we also think that it will provide a little bit more flexibility for the businesses to have a little bit more visibility a little bit higher up. We also are recommending for ground signs to within shopping center out parcels, that staff is recommending that these out parcels be allowed a principal ground sign. Currently, they're not allowed a principal ground sign. And we feel like by doing this, it will level the playing field for those out parcels that are not part of shopping centers that do get a principal ground sign right now. So we just feel like that from a fairness issue, that would help out. We also feel like to reduce the intensity of allowing this, we want to reduce the size to 16 square feet so that it doesn't, be too intense along there on major shopping center. We believe these amendments will help provide more information to the general public regarding businesses within shopping centers. Another sign ordinance amendment would be to increase the size of allowable square footage for wall signs. And currently, Wall signs for single tenants are just 1 square foot per linear square foot of building facade. The proposed ordinance you have before your proposed staff recommendation is to, when a tenant is occupying 100,000 square feet or larger, that be increased to 3 times the length of the building facade. For tenants 50,000 up to 99,000, it will be 2 times the length. And then for less than 50,000, it would be 1.5 times the length of the front facade. This is only allowed if the building meets certain architectural standards or new architectural standards. So for those older developments, in order to get this larger signage, they would have to revamp their building facades, which we're seeing a lot of. The last item that's included in the sign section is regarding flagpole heights. The proposed ordinance allows flagpoles, which are currently not allowed on top of buildings, to be allowed on top of buildings if certain standards are met. And those standards include if it's 1 story, if it's further away from a thoroughfare, 400 feet or more away from a thoroughfare, or for 3-story buildings or higher, you can have that on top of the building. That concludes the major sign amendments. Now turning toward the non-related sign amendments, staff are recommending to tweak the outdoor display of sales of goods regulations to allow it to occur on sides of buildings. Now it's only allowed on front of buildings. We also recommend to clarify the setbacks for screen porches versus a screen deck, or screen porches versus sunrooms, so that sunrooms don't encroach into the setbacks, building setbacks. And with regard to cell tower setbacks, staff is recommending a setback of 1 times the tower setback for existing towers adjacent to undeveloped residential properties. The current setback is 2 times the tower height. We as a staff believe we should make a distinction between a new tower being proposed adjacent to existing development, that should be 2 times the height. But when you have an existing tower and new residential being proposed adjacent to it, that would be 1 times the height. And the reason for that, we feel like that the new residents coming in will know what the setback is for the tower, and it also provides some more flexibility for the developer to use more of the residential land that's there, so for lots. With regard to regulations for severe pruning, staff feels like we need some more flexibility because right now the ordinance is pretty strict on when severe pruning takes place, that sometimes you have to replace the tree when sometimes you might be able to let the tree survive and grow back. Secondly, we feel like some people are doing severe pruning for sign visibility, and so we feel like that if we have some more flexibility to allow the business owner to relocate certain trees elsewhere on the site to provide a little bit more visibility to their signage, that might reduce the conflict of people, doing severe pruning, and kind of work on a win-win situation so that they'll have a little bit more visibility, but yet we still get the street trees in the streetscape. It's just not in that exact location. And then the last amendment, a non-sign related amendment, is regarding group home regulations. We have right now a screening requirement for some landscaping or screening adjacent to parking that they have to put in for the group home. We were recommending removing that requirement because we don't have that requirement on other types of uses, and because group homes are a protected federal use, federally protected use, our legal staff is recommending that standard be removed, and we also are recommending you classify group homes as an accessory use to the main use, since the main use is single-family residential, and this is an accessory use for that primary use. So those are the recommendations for setting a public hearing for June 27th, but we want your feedback to know what direction we need to go, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bucker. Questions or comments? Who wants to go first?
Shall we march through them and take questions for each section?
That sounds fair.
Tom?
Let's
What
do
would you
that.
like to do?
Okay, let's go ahead and start with signage.
All right.
Who would like to go first?
I have some questions. You want to go first, Ed, or is it okay with you if I go?
Go ahead, Ms.
Well,
Adcock.
you might as well.
Okay. I don't have, so I'm looking at your table.
Sure.
Okay, that's page 3 of 12, which is really helpful. Thanks very much for doing that. I don't have any trouble with the proposed change, except I would like to specify in the just to make sure that the proposed language specifies, just like in the existing language, that it's on single-tenant buildings. Because right now it says allow multiple signs per facade where the building segments are.
Okay, yes.
But it doesn't specify single-tenant buildings, and I think it should.
Sure.
Okay.
So that's just a clarification. And my next question is about flags. So
Okay. Mr. Yerha, anything on signage?
Yeah, I have no objection with moving this on to a public hearing. I mean, I'd like to hear what the public has to say. I'd like to hear what P&Z has to say, so I'm good. But I do have some concerns with the sign changes. Not going to go into any particular one right now. That was a good catch you had there on that first one, Gale. But I do have a concern that we're doing a lot of this primarily for one tenant. I know not all of it, but primarily for one tenant. And we're really complicating what is already an extremely complicated ordinance. So I have some concerns there. I may not support all of this when the time comes, but I sure would like to hear everybody else's comment. And my only comment on any of the rest of these has to do with group homes. So
I have a
Okay.
comment about that, too. Well, I actually had some other comments about signs after the flag part, unless you want to.
I mean, if we're on signs, so
Okay.
feel free.
So the next thing was flags, and I'm fine with the 25-foot flag height on the 3 stories or greater. My question is, why would this flag be smaller that far away instead of the same size as it would be if it was on the regulation 50-foot flagpole? Seems like it ought
It
to.
actually is larger, isn't it?
Isn't it, say, an 8 by 12, and right now, the flag can be 10 by 15.
Oh, that's only within.
For entertainment venues.
Within like recreation venues like Baseball USA.
Oh, thank you very much, missed that.
That's
Okay,
the
yeah,
only
well, I'm
time
not,
you can allow that to
Not
occur.
that astute on everything.
It might not have been that
We won't
clear
tell
in there.
anybody.
oh well. One
So
attitude.
television, you don't have to tell anybody.
It's not like
Everybody
this
knows
is
that about me.
televised or anything.
Thank you so much for that clarification. It helps to read both sides of the table, doesn't it?
That's all right.
I did have a question about the monument signs and how much, there's a section in here that says, the planning, okay, I'm looking at the the fourth, it's the second column, the fourth row.
Sure.
Planning director may allow less landscaped area if it conflicts with site triangles or available space, and I think, and again with you, Ed, I'm okay to wait till after public hearing, but I personally think there should be some more specificity to that.
Sure.
How much landscaping could be, in other places where the planning director has discretion, it says 10% into
Okay.
a setback or things like that, and it's specific, and I think we need that here too. So
Okay.
we don't have a case where you don't want anybody to feel like, well, they got more than I did, and it just lends itself to subjectivity, and I would hate to see us with no landscaping around something.
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
Okay.
know. And then the ground signs, I totally get what you're saying about equity for out parcels that aren't connected to or part of a shopping center and those that are. On the other hand, some of these out parcels, while they're out parcels, are pretty darn close to the buildings or the other signs inside a shopping center. And at some point, I'd like to see some examples of
Sure.
what that would be, just to get an idea of, it might look really great. But I'd really like to see those at public, the time of
Sure.
public hearing might be a good time to do that. And then I'd also like to see examples of the under canopy signs. We're moving from 2 square feet to 4 square feet. And I'd just
Yes.
like to see some, I just can't picture any of those in my head right now.
Okay.
That would be great. And the only other comment I had about signs was in the section about wall signs. Let's see, it's the reconsider how wall sign area is calculated. It's page 4 of 12. I bet you've done this, but I'm just going to say this anyway. That should reflect back on the very first part of the change in the signs about the new language about allowing a larger sign if you have different types of facades and just make sure that those two things are consistent and not in conflict with each other, because it talks
Okay.
about how do you calculate this. And it seems to me those things are related to each other.
Okay.
And so with the final language, and that completes my sign questions.
Okay. My quick comments on the signs. I do thank staff for their work on this. I think you've done yeoman's work to ensure that we do become more business-friendly and fair in how we enforce our sign rules and restrictions and guidelines in the town, while also, protecting the visual landscape of Cary. I think you've all done some good work in the way you've worded a lot of this. As Ms. Adcock's pointed out, there's definitely a little bit of clarification that, I think could go a long way to just ensuring that we continue to, keep Cary the beautiful place that it is. So some of this stuff, when I was reading through the report, reminded me a lot of what we did on the sign ordinance task force, and almost kind of felt like
We earned our stripes on that one.
going through this one again, and it is good to see some of this, come to fruition. But yet also ensures that, only our big centers or big tenants, are the ones with certain distances away from the
Sure.
road and certain square footage requirements and such that, this is not going to be a proliferation of more signs all throughout the town. It's pretty limited in what it does. So I do, again, thank you guys for your work on that.
And the only thing I'd add to that is, the purpose of a sign is to help people get places and identify where they want to go. And I think that many of these do exactly that. You're considering, taller landscaping, so we need, you can't see the sign over it,
Sure.
and things like that. It makes perfect sense.
It's one thing we actually heard in the sign ordinance task force. One person always said, we don't have a sign problem, we have a landscaping
Right,
problem.
but we like a lot of greenery. We get a lot of
Right.
kudos for that. So
Right.
this is a way to accommodate.
Kind of balance.
Sure.
that, Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, second item is outdoor display and sales of goods. Any comments or questions on that?
I'm good
I
with
have a
that.
comment.
Okay.
The new section, it's page 6 of 12, if the store is located in a building with 100,000 square feet, and it's talking about the side, using displays on the side. I am sure there is a way to do that that is aesthetically pleasing. I'd like to see a little more detail in this, because if it's flush with the road, it's not below grade or whatever, and you're seeing boats or tractors or something along 3/4 of that side of a building, I do not think that's what we're going for.
Okay.
But I think if it's,
Oh, I see.
visually blocked, and I just think there needs to be a little worded
Standards for
verbiage
that.
in there that makes it clear that it's not going to be visible from
I see.
the road and things like that.
That's a good point. All right.
Yeah, but I don't have any problem with the intent, but I do think that how it's going to look at the end is important, and I know everybody thinks the same thing
Okay.
about that. It's the only question I had about that.
Okay, I do not have any questions or comments. The next item would be sunrooms and screened porches. Any comments or questions?
No, I thought that made sense.
Yeah, it made all the sense in the world. Setbacks from telecommunications facilities?
Same thing.
Okay. Severe pruning?
Did have a question about that. So I just, and this is just my trying to understand this. There's a section in here that says, staff believes the ordinance could be revised to allow the same amount of required trees to be placed in the streetscape while allowing for gaps in the streetscape for some views of business to occur. It makes perfect sense. So you're saying they may not be spaced exactly the same, and you'd have the same number of trees, they may be spaced a different way in order to provide that
Yes.
the ability to visualize the business, so they don't go in and severely prune
Yes.
and then just destroy the shape.
That's
Is that
right. That's right.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I think that makes sense. Okay.
Okay. And no questions or comments, Mr. Yerha?
No, I'm good with it.
And last on the list would be item F, group homes. Mr. Yerha?
Well, my only comment on this, and we may have more comments on the parking from what I understand, but it's on really the second paragraph in your background, where we're changing the use from a principal use to an accessory use. Logically, that makes sense. I agree with you. But when we do that, are there downstream implications? Is this going to, at some point, make it either easier or more difficult in various ways for group homes? I mean, is it, because it's an accessory use, like 6 months from now, or something, is something going to come up and we'll say, well, because it's an accessory use, they no longer can do such and such?
We can most definitely look at that and check with our legal staff about that. I don't know of things like that. Of course, we, as a town, have to abide by the federal legislation, and so we do what we can to accommodate those based within the limits of what we have to work with. Right now, it's just a spacing thing. So I do not feel that the change into accessory use would affect the spacing requirement. That's really the only big thing that we have as a regulation.
Could it,
along
for
with the
instance,
parking.
affect whether you could build a garage that's in front of the house and things like that? I mean, the things that don't have anything to do with how far apart they are, but those other things that impact single-family homes, and if it became an accessory use for, I mean, I hear
Right.
what you're saying, it's
That's exactly
unintended
what I mean.
consequences.
Right.
Almost definitely will check with our legal staff and see if it's doing anything to affect the way we regulate them.
Otherwise, certainly the way you have it stated, it's logical that it's an accessory use rather than a principal use. I mean, it's a single-family home, and it's a type of one. But I just wanted to make sure down the road we're not going to get into trouble.
Absolutely. Ms. Adcock?
Mr. Barker, in your remarks, you referenced the fact that legal had looked at this and had recommended that we change the parking,
The screening.
Screening for parking, and yet that wasn't in the staff report. So my question would be, and I don't see anybody from legal here, but are we going to be in violation of the federal fair housing law if we change this? Or number two, leave ourselves open for suit? Because I would prefer to leave the screening requirement in there because, and thank you for the table you referenced and provided, 7.8.1 that clearly says that for a group home, you have to give 1/2 space per resident, and you may have up to 10 residents, so that's 5 spaces. And, I don't see too many single-family homes that have 5 cars in
Except mine.
front of it. Maybe they've got a 3-car garage and a
Okay.
2-car garage, but they don't have 5 homes. And I think that I would prefer to leave the screening
Okay.
unless we're going to be in legal hot water.
Okay. Most definitely will be able to confirm that for you.
Yeah, I would definitely concur with Ms. Adcock. I mean, if it's a single family, I mean, we got 6 kids.
Yeah.
If everybody comes home for the weekend, I've got 8 cars out in front of my house. But it's a residence, it's our family, and it's not every day. Even though it is an accessory use, it is a business, and this would be an everyday occurrence, and I think that can be it can be a hardship or a burden on the neighborhood. It definitely changed the character, So I'm inclined to leave the screening in there as well, unless there is some legal reason we can't.
And are you in agreement with that, Ed,
Yeah, well, that's,
with that part?
yeah.
So if we're in agreement and legal says it's not in violation with the Fair Labor Housing Law, would we agree to take that part out of what's going to public
Absolutely.
hearing? I think that's what we're saying.
Yes.
And everything else would go forward with some of the, I just want to make sure we were kind of clear on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or?
No, sir.
All right, so this will go forward to public hearing minus the parking requirement or screening, removing the screening requirement for group homes. Thank you very much, Mr. Barker.
Sure. Thank you.
And seeing no other business before us today, we are adjourned.
Ooh, good job.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.